As Christian men, we are called to surrender our lives to Jesus. To surrender to Jesus means to give in, not to give up. We are called to use our strengths, abilities, and opportunities to grow and prosper. We are called to strengthen ourselves, our families, and our communities. We are called to be disciplined, courageous, and honorable. This is Surrendered Strength. Men, welcome back to another episode. And I've been doing some work, some reevaluating, rehashing, and the name of the podcast is going to be changing here in the near future. I don't know when, but just so you know, it's going to be changing. And the focus is going to be changing slightly. We are still going to be focusing on living life to a higher standard and living as a Christian man. But as I continue to dive into what it means to be surrendered, there's just more. There's more than being a Christian when it comes to surrendering. So we are going to expand and just open up to the possibility that there are more men who have surrendered in different ways, but want to live in a way that is at a higher standard. They want to serve, they want to lead, they feel called to serve and lead and to live at a higher standard. And to me, this is what being surrendered is. You live to a higher standard. You know that you are here for a reason, and you are going to live to that standard, to that purpose, to the best of your ability. So more to come on that. But today, I've got an interesting conversation or an interesting topic that we're going to be talking about, and it is sexless marriage. Now, if someone's talking about being in a sexless marriage, they've been there. And if they haven't been there, they don't know. And we've all been, if you've been married, we've all been there. We've all been in a season of maybe no sex, maybe very limited and there's no passion in your physical connection, in your intimacy, and it's not a fun place to be. And I tried getting a bunch of other men's opinions on this, and well, let me back up a bit on the question that we're going to answer today, and that is, how long are you willing to stay in a sexless marriage? And as I've been wrestling with a couple different things, I'm part of the Warrior Group and listen to Garrett J. White and his podcast, and do a lot within the Warrior method and program. And he made a comment that there has to be a limit. There has to be basically a threshold of, if this isn't happening, then this marriage isn't working. And as a Christian, I struggled with this, just this idea. And if that's his thoughts, his opinions, that's fine. I'm not here to say he's wrong. He can have his thoughts, his opinions. But as a Christian, knowing that the Bible says, let no man separate what God has brought together. And so did some wrestling with this, again, in full honesty, knowing that been in a sexless marriage before, and as I was praying and meditating, the question came to me as, what if I knew I was never going to have sex with my wife again? What would I do? Would I stay? Would I go? If my wife came to me and said, I love you, but I love you, I want to stay with you, but I don't want to have sex with you. What would you do? This was the question I prayed and meditated, this is the question I had to wrestle with. And I honestly, I didn't know at first. But then I was brought back to truth and to where my heart was, and settled on this. I settled on the fact that I trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. Psalms 3. And in this truth, in this commitment, what I realized was that my focus had been off, and that I had been focusing on selfishly focusing on having sex and not trusting in the Lord no matter what, not serving my wife, and not loving her unconditionally. So the question is, how long are you guys willing to stay? And before we answer that question, I want to talk about a few reasons why you may or may not, or excuse me, why or how you may have found yourself in this position. And if you've been there and you're out of that season, then you can probably look back and say, yep, that's true. If you're in that season, I would encourage you to just do some examination of where you are in this. So the first reason you may find yourself in a sexless marriage is flat out you're an asshole. I was listening to the Power Couple podcast by the Callahans, I think is their last name, but dude, they threw it out there and just made the point that most men are assholes, especially when it comes to their wives. For some reason, we get into this place where we are expecting things and we end up being assholes. And this is just us living unselfish or selfishly. And the fact that we are in that marriage, that sexless marriage, is 99% chance it's your fault. It's our fault why we're there. So consider that. You're in a sexless marriage, maybe you're just being an asshole. And if you don't want to be in a sexless marriage, don't be an asshole. The reality is that if you were loving your wife unselfishly, she's going to want to have sex with you. If you are loving her in a way that she needs to be loved, she's going to want to have sex with you. Now, again, it's 99% that we're the cause. So there are outliers, but for the most part, if we're being honest, if we're loving our wives in a way that they need to be loved, they're going to want to have sex with us. Number two, you don't see her. And you may be thinking, well, I see her every day. She's right in front of me. Yes, physically, you see her, but you don't see her. You don't see the creation that God has made her. You don't see her for anything other than an object. Your wife, who is supposed to do stuff for you, who's supposed to give you stuff. She is nothing more than an object. Your wife needs to feel seen, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. And when she's not feeling seen, she's going to distance herself. Whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter. We'll get into that point in just a second. But your wife wants to be seen. She wants to be noticed. She wants to be told she's beautiful, that you love her, that you appreciate her. And again, as men, being assholes that we are, we get into a place where we stop seeing. And most likely because we have caveman minds that focus only on providing, protecting, and we get in this place, this tunnel vision that we lose focus on her, on the fact that she is a human, she is a creation, she is a living being, and not here just to serve you. She was here before you and her were married, had become one. So that brings us into number 3. You lack focus on the truth. So chances are you started to believe the lies that she should do this, she won't do this or that. Again, this all comes from a selfish place in our heart where we're expecting her to do things for us that she doesn't ultimately have to do. Yes, the Bible states what she should be doing or could be doing, but our love for her isn't based on that or shouldn't be based on that. If we believe the lies, then our love is based on that. That is, that we are loving with conditions. And we are allowing her thoughts, words, and actions to dictate how we show up. And this isn't biblical. This isn't what it looks like to serve. This isn't what it looks like to lead. And this certainly isn't living to a higher standard, to only show up when our needs are met, to only serve when our needs are met, to only lead when our needs are met. That is conditional love. And the Bible says we are to love unconditionally. And unconditionally is without condition. So it doesn't matter if your wife didn't do the dishes. It doesn't matter if your wife didn't do the laundry. It doesn't matter if the house is dirty when you come home. Supper's not made. You didn't have sex. You still love your wife. Not because she did or did not do any of those things. Because you made that commitment. You made that covenant with her and with God. So the question remains, how long would you be willing to stay in a sexless marriage? The real question we should be asking, though, is how long will you continue to be an asshole, to not see her and to focus on the lies and to love her with conditions? That's the real question. Because when we stop being an asshole, when we start to see her and notice her and appreciate her, and when we stop believing the lies that our love is based on a condition or based on what she does, then she's going to be more open to drawing closer to us, to moving closer to us, and to helping us meet our needs. And there's probably some of you that are arguing, oh, well, that's not supposed to be 50-50 both ways, blah, blah, blah. The question that comes from that is, where do you base your standards? What are your standards for marriage? What are your standards for love? And as Christians, pretty clear in the Bible. Again, let no man break what God has brought together or separate what God has brought together. So whether you are in that season of a sexless marriage, and maybe you're at a point where you're beyond the sexlessness and she wants to leave, and or she's out the door already, maybe start applying some of these truths and see how fast her heart changes for you. See how fast her heart changes when you stop being an asshole, when you start noticing her, and when you just love her and appreciate her for being her. Now, one of the things that I've done and started doing within the Warrior program is writing notes. The goal is to make a deposit into her life, whether that's a written note, a message, via video, via text, whatever, each day. And this started back in August. Definitely have not been perfect. And there's no excuse for me to not do that. And this has been helpful. But what is also helpful is getting your mind shifted back to loving your wife unconditionally. Getting your mind shifted back to the fact that she owes you nothing. Getting your mind shifted back to the fact that we are called to serve. Getting our minds back to the fact that we are called to lead. And oh, by the way, to imitate Jesus is to be a servant leader. And getting your mind back to the fact that we live to a higher standard. And the reality is, the reason you're being an asshole is because you've lowered your standards to the standards of this world, to the standards that you were raised up in, instead of following the standards of the Bible, following the standard that Jesus set for us. So men, I hope this encourages you and gives you some tips and tools to take back into your marriage, into your life. And these lessons, they apply to every area of your life, not just your marriage. When you're not being an asshole, when you're noticing the people that you're serving and leading, And when you're not believing the lies and you're focusing on truth, your world will change in a way that you will not expect. You don't know. So I encourage you to definitely start at home. And that's one of the big things that my wife has taught me. We have to do what we need to do at home first and then take it into the world. And I'm a slow learner. It's taken me a while, but I'm getting there. So start at home, start with your wife. If you have kids, start with them next. Stop being an asshole to them. Start seeing them, noticing them, making a deposit into their life, and start loving them unconditionally. So, men, be a surrendered man. Be the man that you're called to be, to serve, to lead, and to live to a higher standard. God bless, and I love you. Thanks for listening. Connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Surrendered Strength. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share, and live the Surrendered Strength Code. Discipline, courage, honor.